Now let's begin. Thomas McKenzie stood in the hospital cafeteria, staring at the burnt coffee in his cup like it held answers. Through the window, he could see his 7-year-old son Sam's room on the 4th floor. The boy had been unconscious for 6 hours now, hooked up to machines that beeped a rhythm Thomas had memorized. Mr. McKenzie? Dr. Faith Moody appeared beside him, tablet in hand. She was young for a pediatric cardiologist, but her eyes held the weight of too many hard conversations. We need to discuss Sam's treatment plan. Thomas straightened. Tell me. The echocardiogram confirmed what we suspected. Sam has a severe congenital heart defect, a combination of abnormalities we rarely see this advanced in a child his age. Without surgical intervention within the next 2 weeks, his survival rate drops to less than 15%. The cafeteria noise faded. Thomas heard himself ask, and with surgery? 85 to 90% success rate. It's complex, probably 8 hours in the OR, followed by intensive care and months of recovery. But he'd have a normal life afterward. She paused. The cost is significant. Your insurance covers about 60%. Your out-of-pocket comes to roughly $85,000. Thomas had $15,000 in savings. He'd been driving a paid-off sedan worth maybe $12,000. His salary as a project coordinator at a construction firm barely covered their mortgage and his wife Chelsea's expensive tastes. The Lehmans, his in-laws, had always made it clear he wasn't good enough for their daughter, that his middle-class background was a stain on their bloodline. But they had money. Real money. I'll find a way, Thomas said. When can we schedule it? Dr. Moody squeezed his shoulder. I'll put him on the schedule for 10 days from now. That gives you time to arrange finances. She hesitated. Mr. McKenzie, I've seen families destroy themselves over medical bills. Make sure you're thinking clearly. Thomas returned to Sam's room, where Chelsea sat scrolling through her phone, her designer bag worth more than their monthly mortgage payment resting on the chair beside her. She'd been crying earlier. Her mascara had run, but now her face showed only irritation. The doctor said you talked to her, Chelsea said without looking up. $85,000, Thomas. Where exactly do you plan to get that kind of money? I thought we'd ask your parents. Her laugh was bitter. You think my father will just write a check? You know how he feels about. She stopped, glancing at Sam's sleeping form. About what, Chelsea? She stood, gathering her bag. I need air. This place is suffocating. Thomas watched her leave, then pulled a chair beside Sam's bed. His son's face was pale against the white pillow, small for his age. Kids at school called him weak, scrawny. The Lehmans called him the same in more sophisticated language. Sam's eyes fluttered open. Dad, hey buddy, how you feeling? Tired. Sam's voice was thin. Am I gonna die? Thomas took his son's hand. So small, so fragile. Not if I have anything to say about it. Grandpa Barry said I'm not strong like the Lehmans. Mom told him to stop, but he said it anyway. Sam's eyes welled. He said some people aren't meant to grow old. Something cold settled in Thomas's chest. Your grandpa is wrong. You're the strongest person I know. That evening, Thomas drove to the Lehman estate in Ashbrook Hills, where houses had gates and tennis courts and generational wealth. The McKenzie apartment in Riverside was a 40-minute drive from this world, a distance Chelsea had never been comfortable crossing backward. Barry Lehman answered the door himself. The staff was off on Sundays. He was 63 but looked 50, with silver hair and a golf tan that screamed country club memberships. Behind him, the foyer gleamed with marble and a chandelier that cost more than Thomas made in a year. Thomas. Chelsea called. Come in. Margie Lehman sat in the living room, wine glass in hand, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. She was 58, maintained through Pilates and estheticians, her blonde hair highlighted to hide the gray. Chelsea sat beside her mother, not meeting Thomas's eyes. We understand Sam needs surgery, Barry began, settling into his leather chair like a judge at a bench. Chelsea explained the financial situation. I need to borrow $85,000, Thomas said directly. I'll pay you back with interest. I'll work extra hours, take on freelance work, whatever it takes. But Sam needs this surgery in 10 days. Barry swirled his scotch. Thomas, let me be frank. Margie and I have spent our lives building wealth, creating opportunities for our family. We did this through discipline and hard decisions. This is your grandson, who has a genetic defect, Barry said flatly. These things happen in nature. The weak don't survive. That's biology. Thomas felt his hands curl into fists. He's 7 years old. Which is why you need to think rationally instead of emotionally. Barry leaned forward. Even if this surgery succeeds, and there's no guarantee, what's his quality of life? More surgeries? Medications? Limitations? You'd be spending a fortune to give him a half-life. Margie spoke up, her voice softer but no less cutting. We love Sam, Thomas. But love sometimes means accepting reality. The money you're asking for could be invested in Chelsea's future and any other children you might have. Healthy children. You're saying my son isn't worth saving. We're saying that difficult situations require difficult choices, Barry said. Nature has a way of correcting its mistakes. Perhaps it's cruel, but it's honest. Not every life is meant to be lived fully. Chelsea finally looked up. Dad, that's... Chelsea, stay out of this, Barry snapped. Your husband needs to hear truth, not sentiment. Thomas, you make $42,000 a year. You have no significant assets. You're already living beyond your means trying to keep up with your wife's upbringing. This surgery would bury you in debt for decades. And for what? A boy who will never be healthy enough to carry on a real legacy? Thomas stood. Sam is the only legacy that matters to me. Then you're a fool, Barry said. And I didn't raise my daughter to tie herself to a fool's sinking ship. We won't be funding this surgery. If you want to destroy yourself financially for a lost cause, that's your choice. But don't expect us to participate in your delusion. Thomas looked at Chelsea. And you agree with this? She twisted her wedding ring. Thomas, maybe we should consider other options. There are payment plans, medical loans. I asked if you agree that our son isn't worth saving. Don't twist my words. I just think we need to be realistic about what we can afford, what Sam's life would actually look like. Get up. What? Stand up, Chelsea. Right now? We're leaving. She remained seated, and Thomas realized with sickening clarity that she'd already made her choice. She'd probably made it before he arrived. I'll find the money myself, Thomas said. And when Sam is healthy and whole and living the full life these people say he doesn't deserve, I want you all to remember this conversation. Barry stood, straightening his golf shirt. You'll remember it too, when you're 50 years old and still drowning in debt for a son who couldn't make it anyway. Don't come crawling back here when reality hits. Thomas drove home alone. Chelsea texted that she was staying at her parents' house to think things through. He sat in their apartment, modest but filled with photos of Sam learning to ride a bike, blowing out birthday candles, grinning gap-toothed at his first day of school. His phone buzzed. Wallace Ochoa, his college roommate, and one of his few real friends. Tommy, you okay? Chelsea's Facebook status just changed to it's complicated. Thomas laughed, the sound hollow. That's one way to put it. What happened? He told him everything. Wallace listened without interrupting, a rare quality in their social media age. Those people are monsters, Wallace said finally. What do you need? A miracle. 85 grand in 10 days. I've got about 8,000 I can loan you. No interest, pay me back whenever. Thomas's throat tightened. Wallace, Sam's my godson, man. I was there when he was born. I'll get you the money tomorrow. Thomas spent the night researching options. Medical loans came with brutal interest rates. A GoFundMe might raise some money, but not enough, not fast enough. His 401k had 12,000, but early withdrawal meant penalties. His car would get maybe 10,000 at best. At 3 a.m., he made a decision. The next morning, Thomas put the car on Craigslist, listed everything of value in their apartment, withdrew his retirement fund, and applied for every credit card he could find. By afternoon, he had commitments for $62,000, still short, but closer. He visited Sam during lunch. His son was awake, drawing pictures of superheroes. Dad, when I'm better, can we go to the baseball game? The one you promised. Front row seats, Thomas promised. I'll teach you to keep score. Will Mom come? Thomas brushed hair from Sam's forehead. I don't know, buddy, but I'll be there. I'll always be there. Sam studied his father's face. You look tired. Just working hard. But it's worth it. You're worth everything, Sam. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. Dr. Moody appeared in the doorway. Mr. Mackenzie, can I speak with you? Outside, she handed him paperwork. I pulled some strings. There's a foundation that helps families in your situation. They've agreed to contribute $15,000 toward Sam's surgery if you can match it with your own funds. Thomas nearly collapsed with relief. That means I only need $70,000. I know it's still enormous, but it's a start. He had 62 committed. He needed 8 more. Wallace had already offered 8. That was it. That was the number. Schedule the surgery, Thomas said. I'll have the money. Over the next week, Thomas moved like a machine. He sold the car to a dealer for $9,000 cash. He sold his guitar, his laptop, their TV, Chelsea's jewelry that she'd left behind. He took a second job doing night security at a warehouse. He slept 4 hours a night. Chelsea called twice. The first time, she asked if he was really going through with this. The second time, she asked him to sign divorce papers. He hung up both times. The night before Sam's surgery, Thomas sat in his hospital room. He'd raised $73,000. With Wallace's 8 and the foundation's 15, they'd have $96,000, more than enough. Sam was nervous, gripping his father's hand. What if I don't wake up? You will. I promise you will. And when you do, we're going to have the best summer ever. Just you and me. Sound good? No, Mom. Thomas hesitated. Mom loves you, buddy. She's just dealing with some stuff. But I love you enough for both of us. I know you do, Dad. You're my hero. At 6 a.m., they wheeled Sam into surgery. Dr. Moody squeezed Thomas's shoulder. We've got him. Go get some coffee. This will take hours. Thomas called Wallace, who arrived an hour later with real food from a diner. They sat in the waiting room, surrounded by other families in their own private crises. Chelsea's an idiot, Wallace said. And her parents are sociopaths. They're her family. You and Sam are her family. They're just people she's related to. There's a difference. 8 hours later, Dr. Moody emerged, exhausted but smiling. He did beautifully. The repair took longer than expected, but everything looks perfect. He'll be in ICU for a few days, then recovery for about 2 weeks. But Thomas, he's going to be fine. Thomas broke down right there in the hallway, every sleepless night and moment of terror pouring out. Wallace hugged him, and Dr. Moody waited patiently until he could speak again. Can I see him? He's still unconscious, but yes. Sam looked tiny in the ICU bed, surrounded by machines and tubes. But his color was better. His chest rose and fell steadily. Thomas held his small hand and cried again, this time from relief. 2 days later, Sam woke up. His first words were, "Did you get front row seats yet?" Thomas laughed through tears. Not yet, but I will. Over the next weeks, Sam's recovery exceeded expectations. He grew stronger daily. Nurses said they'd never seen a kid bounce back so fast. Dr. Moody called him her miracle patient. Chelsea visited once, bringing flowers and guilt. I'm sorry, she said. I was scared. My parents were so sure he wouldn't make it, and I believed them. You believe them over your own son. I know. I'm sorry, Thomas. I really am. I want to come back. I want us to be a family again. Thomas looked at his wife, her designer clothes, her perfect hair, her remorseful expression that seemed practiced. Do you love Sam? Of course I do. Then why weren't you here? Why didn't you fight for him? Why didn't you sell your jewelry, your car, anything to save him? I was raised differently. My parents said, your parents were wrong. About Sam. About me. About everything that matters. He stood. I filed divorce papers yesterday. You'll be served next week. I want full custody. Thomas, please. I'm done, Chelsea. When I needed a partner, you chose them. When Sam needed a mother, you abandoned him. There's nothing left to save here. She left crying, but Thomas felt only relief. That night, as Sam slept peacefully in his hospital bed, Thomas made plans. He'd lost almost everything, but he had his son, and Sam was worth it all. 5 years passed like a river, sometimes rushing, sometimes calm, but always moving forward. Sam Mackenzie, now 13, stood at the edge of the soccer field, not as the weak kid everyone counted out, but as the team's starting midfielder. His scar had faded to a thin line down his chest, a badge he wore with quiet pride. He was still slight for his age, but he'd learned to use speed and intelligence instead of brute force. His coaches called him strategic. His teammates called him clutch. Thomas watched from the bleachers, briefcase beside him, tie loosened after a long day. He'd worked his way up from project coordinator to senior hospital administrator at Mercy General, one of the state's largest medical centers. The irony wasn't lost on him. The industry that had nearly bankrupted him now paid him a 6-figure salary. He'd spent 3 years earning a healthcare MBA through night classes while raising Sam, sleeping 5 hours a night, but they'd made it work. Their apartment in Riverside had given way to a modest house in a good school district. Thomas drove a sensible sedan, not the luxury cars his salary could afford. Every extra dollar went into Sam's college fund and paying off the last of the medical debt. They lived simply, but they lived well. Wallace Ochoa sat beside him, munching popcorn. He'd become more than a friend. He was family, showing up to every one of Sam's games, every parent-teacher conference, every moment that mattered. He'd married 2 years ago to a woman named Pearl who treated Sam like a nephew. Kids got moves, Wallace said as Sam stole the ball and sprinted downfield. Remember when the Lehmans said he'd never have a normal life? Thomas's jaw tightened. He tried not to think about the Lehmans. Chelsea had remarried 3 years ago to a corporate attorney her father approved of, someone with the right pedigree and portfolio. She saw Sam on court-mandated weekends twice a month, though she often canceled. Sam had stopped asking why. The Lehmans themselves had tried reaching out once, a year after the divorce, sending a birthday card with a check for $50. Thomas had returned it unopened. They'd made their position clear that night 5 years ago. He owed them nothing. Sam scored just before the final whistle, and the crowd erupted. Thomas cheered, his heart swelling with pride. This was what mattered. This moment, this kid, this life they'd built together. After the game, Sam jogged over, sweaty and grinning. Did you see that shot? Top corner. Goalie didn't have a chance. Thomas handed him a water bottle. Hungry? Wallace and Pearl want to take us to Gino's. Can we get the cannoli? We can get whatever you want, champ. In the parking lot, Thomas's phone buzzed. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him swipe. Thomas Mackenzie? The voice was familiar, but aged. Margie Lehman. He froze. Sam was ahead with Wallace, laughing about something. Thomas stepped away. What do you want, Margie? She paused, and he heard something break in her voice. It's Barry. He's sick. Liver failure. He needs a transplant. Thomas felt nothing. I'm sorry to hear that. Thomas, please. The medical bills are enormous, even with insurance. The transplant alone is over $200,000. We've already spent $40,000 on treatments. We need help. Help? He laughed, cold and sharp. Like the help you gave Sam when he was dying? Like the compassion you showed when you called my son a genetic mistake? That was different. It was exactly the same. A child who needed saving. And you said he wasn't worth the money. Remember? Not every life is meant to be lived fully. Those were Barry's exact words. He was wrong. We were wrong. Thomas, I'm begging you. You're successful now. You work in hospital administration. You have connections, resources. You need to understand something, Margie. When you sat in your mansion and told me my son's life wasn't worth saving, you made a choice. You chose your pride, your eugenics philosophy, your cold assessment of human worth over your own grandson. Now nature is correcting its mistakes. Isn't that what Barry said? That nature has a way. He's dying, Thomas. He's my husband. And Sam was your grandson. A 7-year-old boy who'd never hurt anyone. I sold everything I owned to save him. I worked 3 jobs. I went into debt that took me 5 years to pay off. And you know what? I'd do it again tomorrow. Because Sam is worth everything. But Barry, Thomas's voice went ice cold. Barry isn't worth a dime of my money or a second of my time. Please, don't call me again. And tell Chelsea that when she chose you over Sam, she chose this too. You're all living with the consequences of your own cruelty. I hope Barry thinks about Sam as he lies in that hospital bed. I hope he remembers calling a little boy weak and defective. I hope it haunts him. He hung up. Wallace had noticed him on the phone and walked back over. Everything okay? Barry Lehman is dying. Needs a liver transplant. Margie called asking for money. Wallace's eyes widened. You're kidding. Nope. Thomas pocketed his phone. I told her no. Good. Those people deserve everything they get. Sam had joined them, pizza forgotten. Grandpa Barry is sick. Thomas's stomach dropped. He'd tried to shield Sam from the ugliness with the Lehmans, but Sam was smart. He knew the basics, that his grandparents had refused to help with his surgery, that his mother had chosen them over him. But hearing it again, seeing the concern in Sam's young face, Thomas felt the old anger resurface. Yeah, buddy, but it's not our problem. Sam was quiet during dinner. Thomas knew that look, his son processing something complex, working through thoughts he wasn't ready to share. At 13, Sam had inherited his father's analytical mind, but combined it with a compassion that sometimes surprised Thomas. The kid had every reason to be bitter, angry, hardened. Instead, he was kind. That night, as Thomas said goodnight, Sam stopped him at the door. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever think about them? Grandpa Barry and Grandma Margie. Thomas sat on the edge of Sam's bed. Sometimes. Mostly I try not to. Are you going to help Grandpa Barry? With the transplant? No, Sam. I'm not. Because of what he said about me? Because of what he did to you. To us. There's a difference between words and actions. He didn't just insult you. He refused to help when you were dying. That's not something I can forgive. Sam nodded slowly. I understand. I think I agree with you. Relief flooded through Thomas. Yeah. Some things you can't take back, right? Some choices are permanent. That's right, buddy. Now get some sleep. But Thomas couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, replaying the phone call, second-guessing himself. Was he being cruel? Vindictive? Was he setting a bad example for Sam about forgiveness and compassion? No, this wasn't about revenge. It was about consequences. The Lehmans had made a choice based on money and genetics and their warped sense of worth. Now they faced a similar choice from someone they deemed inferior. Karma wasn't cruel. It was just consistent. 3 days later, Chelsea called. Thomas let it go to voicemail, but he listened to the message. Thomas, it's me. My mother is beside herself. Dad is getting worse. They're on a transplant list, but it could take months, and he doesn't have months. I know what they did was wrong. I know what I did was wrong. But he's still Sam's grandfather. Please. For Sam's sake, not mine. Just call me back. For Sam's sake. The manipulation was almost admirable. That weekend, Thomas and Sam went hiking at Devil's Ridge, something they did monthly since Sam had gotten strong enough. At the summit, they sat on a rock outcropping, sharing sandwiches and surveying the valley below. Mom called you, Sam said. It wasn't a question. She did. About your grandfather. What did she say? That I should help him for your sake. Sam chewed thoughtfully. That's manipulative. Thomas couldn't help but smile. Yeah, it is. I don't want you to help him because of me. I want you to do what you think is right. And what do you think is right, Sam? His son stared at the horizon. I think people like Grandpa Barry don't change. He called me defective. He said I wasn't worth saving. If you help him now, he'll just think he was right. That he can treat people however he wants because eventually they'll cave. Sam looked at his father. You taught me that actions have consequences. That's what this is, right? Consequences. Thomas pulled his son close. You're pretty smart, you know that. I learned from the best. That evening, Margie called again. Thomas answered this time. I'm listening, he said. 1 minute. That's all you get. Thomas, please. Barry is at Mercy General. He's on the transplant list, but they found complications. He needs a living donor now, partial liver transplant. We've been tested. I'm not compatible, and neither is Chelsea. We're reaching out to relatives, but the matching process takes time he doesn't have. And you want me to help how? I'm not giving you money, Margie. You're a senior administrator at Mercy. You have connections with the transplant board. If you could just make some calls, push his case to the top of the list. Absolutely not. Thomas's voice could have cut glass. You want me to use my position to give Barry preferential treatment? To jump him ahead of other people dying? People who might actually deserve to live. Don't say that. He deserves exactly what he determined Sam deserved. Nothing. Barry made his judgment about whose life has value. Now someone else gets to make that judgment about his. Goodbye, Margie. He blocked her number. Then he blocked Chelsea's. Then he blocked Barry's, just in case. 2 weeks later, Thomas was in his office reviewing quarterly reports when his assistant knocked. Mr. Mackenzie? There's a young woman here to see you. Says she's your ex-wife's sister. Thomas frowned. Chelsea didn't have a sister, but he told his assistant to send her in. The woman who entered was maybe 25, with the Lehman features, but softer, kinder. She introduced herself as Rochelle Dunn, Barry's niece from his first marriage, a marriage the Lehmans apparently never discussed. I know this is strange, Rochelle said, sitting across from him, but I needed to talk to you. About Barry. I'm not helping him. I'm not asking you to. Actually, I wanted to thank you for not helping him. Thomas blinked. Excuse me. Rochelle leaned forward. Barry Lehman destroyed my family. My father was his younger brother, Charles. 20 years ago, Charles had a daughter, my sister, Emma. She was born with cerebral palsy. Needed constant care, expensive treatments. My parents weren't wealthy. They asked Barry for help. Thomas's blood ran cold. He said no. He said Emma wasn't worth the investment. That some lives weren't meant to be lived fully. Sound familiar? Rochelle's eyes blazed. My parents went bankrupt trying to save her. Lost their house, their marriage, everything. Emma died when she was 9. My father never forgave Barry. He cut all contact with the Lehmans. I barely knew I had an uncle until recently. Why are you telling me this? Because when I heard Barry needed a transplant and his family was begging for help, I remembered Emma. I remembered my father crying at her funeral, saying Barry could have saved her. And I thought about karma. She stood. You owe those people nothing, Mr. Mackenzie. What they did to your son, they've done before. They're not good people. They're selfish, cruel, and they deserve exactly what they're getting. After she left, Thomas sat in silence. Then he called Wallace. You sitting down? Thomas asked. Should I be? The Lehmans did to Barry's own niece what they did to Sam. 20 years ago, the girl died. Wallace was quiet for a long moment. So this is a pattern, a philosophy. Barry genuinely believes some people aren't worth saving. Then why should anyone save him? Exactly. That night, Thomas told Sam about Rochelle's visit. His son listened quietly, then said, Emma was 9? Yeah, that's younger than I was. And she died. She did. Sam's jaw set in a way that reminded Thomas of himself. Then we're definitely not helping Grandpa Barry. Emma deserves justice, even if it's too late. 3 more weeks passed. Thomas heard through hospital gossip that Barry Lehman was deteriorating rapidly. A donor hadn't been found. The family was desperate, burning through their fortune on experimental treatments and private searches for donors. Thomas felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction. Just a quiet certainty that sometimes the world balanced itself. Then, on a Tuesday evening in late October, Sam came home from school with a strange expression. Thomas was making dinner. Pasta, Sam's favorite. Dad, I need to tell you something. Thomas's parental radar activated. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I've been thinking about Grandpa Barry. Thomas set down the spoon. Sam, let me finish. Please. Thomas nodded. Sam took a deep breath. I've been doing research about liver transplants, donor matching, survival rates. And I found out something. What? Sometimes family members are the best matches. Children especially. So I contacted Grandma Margie through Facebook. I asked if she'd be willing to test me to see if I'm compatible. Thomas felt the room tilt. You what? I wanted to know if I could save him. If my liver could match his. Sam, why would you even? Because I wanted to make a choice, Dad. Just like you made a choice to save me. I wanted to decide for myself what I thought Grandpa Barry deserved. Thomas sat down heavily. And I'm a match. Almost perfect compatibility. They could do the surgery next week. The world stopped. Thomas stared at his son, this brilliant, compassionate, impossible kid, and felt everything shift. You're 13 years old, Thomas said carefully. This is a major surgery. You'd be giving part of your liver to a man who called you defective, who said you weren't worth saving. I know what he said. I was there, remember? I heard it all. Sam's voice was steady. But here's the thing, Dad. I don't want to donate to save Grandpa Barry. Then why? I want to donate to prove him wrong. I want him to live the rest of his life knowing that the defective grandson he abandoned saved him. I want him to wake up every morning and remember that his life only exists because I was worth saving. Because you fought for me when he wouldn't. Sam stepped closer. I want Grandpa Barry to live, Dad. Not because I forgive him, but because death would let him escape the guilt. I want him to carry it for years. I want him to see me graduate, go to college, have a career, have a family. I want him to watch me live a full, successful, happy life and know that he was wrong about everything. Thomas couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Plus, Sam continued, a hint of steel in his voice. I've been talking to Rochelle, Emma's sister. She told me what happened to her family. If I donate, I want Grandpa Barry to publicly acknowledge what he did to Emma. I want him to apologize to her family. I want him to face what he is. That's my condition. Sam, Thomas's voice cracked. You don't have to do this. You don't owe him anything. I know I don't. But I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for me. For Emma. For everyone Grandpa Barry ever made feel worthless. I'm proving that the people he threw away were the ones worth saving all along. Thomas pulled his son into a hug. This incredible young man who'd somehow turned trauma into wisdom, pain into purpose. You're going to change the world, you know that? I learned from my hero, Sam said quietly. You showed me that love means fighting for people even when it costs you everything. Now I'm choosing to fight too. Just in my own way. Thomas called Margie that night. Her voice was hoarse, exhausted. Thomas. Sam wants to be tested as a donor for Barry. Silence. Then, oh my God. Thomas, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet. There are conditions. He laid them out. Barry would publicly acknowledge what he'd done to Emma, apologize to her family, and establish a foundation in Emma's name to help families with disabled children afford medical care. The foundation would be funded with $2 million, a fraction of the Lehman fortune, but meaningful. And most importantly, Barry would stand in front of Sam and apologize. Sincerely. On camera. If he agrees to all of that, Sam will donate. If he refuses even one condition, the offer disappears. Margie agreed within an hour. Barry himself took 2 days, and only agreed when he was told it was his last option. Pride, apparently, was stronger than survival instinct, but not quite strong enough to die for. The day of Barry's public apology, half of Ashbrook Hills seemed to attend. It was held at the Lehman estate, cameras rolling, Rochelle and her family in the front row. Barry Lehman looked small for the first time in his life. Liver failure had stolen his golf tan, his authoritative bearing. He sat in a wheelchair, yellow-tinged and weak. Sam stood beside Thomas, 13 years old, but standing tall. Dr. Moody had cleared him for donation after extensive testing. His heart was strong enough, his body healthy enough. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. Barry read from notes, his voice thin. 20 years ago, my niece Emma needed medical treatment I could have provided. I refused. I told her parents that her life wasn't worth the investment. She died because I valued money over family. I was wrong. I was cruel. And I'm sorry. Rochelle's father, Charles, sat stone-faced. He didn't acknowledge the apology. Some wounds ran too deep. Then Barry turned to Sam. And 5 years ago, I said the same thing about my grandson. I called him weak. I said he wasn't worth saving. I watched his father destroy himself financially to save him while I sat in my mansion and did nothing. Barry's voice broke. I was wrong about everything. Sam wasn't the defective one. I was. And now this boy I abandoned is saving my life. I don't deserve it. I don't deserve him. But I will spend whatever time I have left trying to be worthy of this second chance. Sam stepped forward. I'm not doing this because I forgive you, Grandpa. I'm doing this because I refuse to become you. You taught me what not to be. My dad taught me what to be. And what I am is someone who saves lives, even when those lives belong to people who don't deserve it. The room was silent. I hope you live a long time, Grandpa Barry. I hope you watch me succeed. I hope it eats you alive knowing you almost threw me away. And I hope that guilt makes you a better person, because right now, you're not one. Sam walked away, and Thomas followed, pride bursting in his chest. The surgery went perfectly. Sam recovered quickly, his young body bouncing back within weeks. Barry survived too, his new liver functioning well. He kept his word about the foundation, funding it with $3 million instead of $2 million. Chelsea tried to reconnect with Sam afterward, full of tears and apologies. Sam met with her once, listened to her explain how she'd been manipulated by her parents, how she regretted everything. Do you actually regret it, Mom? Sam asked. Or do you just regret that I turned out okay despite you abandoning me? She had no answer. 6 months later, Thomas and Sam sat at a baseball game, front row seats. Sam had a hot dog loaded with everything, and Thomas had an overpriced beer. The home team was winning. Dad, Sam said during the 7th inning stretch. Yeah, buddy. Do you think I did the right thing? Donating to Grandpa Barry. Thomas considered his answer carefully. I think you did something I never could have done. Something bigger than revenge. You took power away from him. The power to define your worth, your choices, your life. That takes more strength than I have. You would have done the same thing if you were me. Maybe. Maybe not. But I'm glad you're you, Sam. I'm glad you're exactly who you are. Sam grinned. Even if I'm genetically defective? Thomas laughed. Especially then. They watched the rest of the game in comfortable silence, father and son, survivors of a war they'd won by refusing to become casualties. Barry Lehman lived with his guilt. Emma's family had their acknowledgement and foundation. Chelsea had her regrets. But Thomas and Sam? They had front row seats, hot dogs, and each other. They had a life built on sacrifice and love and second chances earned through suffering. And in the end, they had something the Lehmans never would. They had won, not by destroying their enemies, but by being better than them. By choosing compassion when they could have chosen cruelty. By proving that worth isn't measured in genetics or wealth or social standing. It's measured in moments like these, a father and son, a baseball game, a future bright with possibilities that once seemed impossible. Sam's scar had faded, but the lesson remained. Some lives are worth everything, and the people who can't see that don't deserve to define anyone's value. Thomas looked at his son, healthy and whole and extraordinary, and smiled. They'd both survived, and that was all the revenge they needed. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.